Hello, everyone. Ted Lacksonen, the Country Thinker here, bringing you the next episode of The Eagle Has Crashed. Today we're going to do the first half of July of 2029. Now, last week we did all of June 2029, and we checked in with Nate and Cassie North, and we saw that the North Fab employees went on strike and ultimately went and burned the North Fab delivery vehicles. We also had Kevin Davis get caught up in a brawl outside the unemployment office, as well as we spent a little time with Dylan Johansson at his legal reform rally that ended with a threat from an unknown gentleman at the end of the rally. This week we're going to meet a couple of new characters, namely the Democratic congressional leadership. So, let's go ahead and just jump right into the story. Mr. President, we're out of money. President Maynard looked up from his newspaper and met the green-eyed stare of Treasury Secretary Waters. Maynard's shoulders slumped and he looked back down with a deflated look, much like the afternoon at Brown when his mistake on the lacrosse field cost the Bears a match to the almighty Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Moments of defeat were rare for Chris Maynard, however, and none had ever borne such profound weight as the trouble before him. "It came on a hell of a lot faster than we thought," the president said. It did. "I guess you were wrong that the bad economic numbers were just an aberration." Waters clenched his jaw inside. "It appears so." "All right, what are we going to do?" "We're going to have to talk to Congress and see if we can make something happen fast." "I agree. Let's stick to our House and Senate leaders for now. I don't want to create a circus. I just want to make something happen quickly, as in immediately." President Maynard sat behind his desk, with Treasury Secretary Waters in a chair to his left. Chief of Staff Pirelli paced near the Oval Office door, like a German shepherd patrolling the perimeter of a prison yard. House Minority Leader Sandy Burks arrived first, stomping past Pirelli without looking, her short, stocky figure and spiky gray hair bouncing as she headed for one of the two empty chairs in front of the president's desk. The passionate advocate for social services sat down, crossed her legs, and folded her arms. "Good morning, Mr. President," she said without a smile. "Good morning, Congresswoman," the president said. "What's the emergency?" she asked. "Let's wait till Senator Caldwell gets here." The Senate Majority Leader arrived a few minutes later. He greeted the Chief of Staff with a gray-bearded smile. "How you doing today, Mr. Pirelli?" Senator Caldwell drawled. The senator from North Carolina was a throwback from an older era, some said a different century, when senatorial politicking was a gentleman's game played more like chess than rugby. The men shook hands. "Doing good, Mr. Senator." Pirelli patted him on the back. "Glad you can make it on short notice." "Oh, it's my pleasure, Tony. It's always an honor to get a personal invite to the Oval Office." Senator Caldwell smiled and made his way to the empty chair at Congresswoman Burke's right. The president stood up and turned toward the window behind him. "We have a very serious problem on our hands." "Which is?" Congresswoman Burks asked as she leaned forward. The president turned and faced them. "We're out of money." Senator Caldwell leaned back and stroked his beard, while Congresswoman Burks thrust her solid jaw forward and scolded. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means the Treasury account is empty," replied Secretary Waters. "There isn't enough in the checkbook to pay all the bills." Senator Caldwell rubbed his temple. "How'd that happen? And why is this the first I've heard of it?" "All of our analysis indicated that the Q2 economic numbers were an aberration," Waters said, with his palm outstretched. "We didn't want to take any rash action." "If the Treasury numbers are so bad, why isn't everyone screaming right now?" the senator asked. Waters and Maynard cast glances at one another. "Lord have mercy, you didn't," Senator Caldwell responded. "Didn't what?" Burks asked. Senator Caldwell inhaled slowly and then exhaled with a gust. "They fudged the budget reporting numbers, Sandy." Burks scowled again. "Are you fucking kidding me?" The Chief of Staff placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mouth, Burks. Watch it." Congresswoman Burks brushed his hand away, then put her hand over her eyes. "The Republicans will kill us if they find out about this. That bastard Baston will crawl 8 miles up our asses until we beg for mercy." She was correct. Speaker of the House Switchblade, Frank Baston, hadn't gotten the gavel by playing nice. "We don't intend to discuss it with them directly," the president said. "Ben has the numbers under control. The good news, our books have been so screwed up for so long it'll be virtually impossible for anyone to figure out what we've done. We only need to tell the Republicans we've got budget trouble ahead and that we need to take swift bipartisan action." Senator Caldwell raised his hand. "Excuse me for asking, but why aren't we just issuing more debt?" "Fed Head Sullivan won't let us," Waters replied. "And if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the ones who crossed the line and voted to give the Fed chief that power." "I stand by that vote, Mr. Secretary," Caldwell said, tilting his head. "And I wouldn't say I crossed the line when the Senate vote was 94-6. Sullivan has done a good job, and I am certain her decision is well considered. I also want to say that I'm quite disappointed I wasn't informed of this situation sooner. I concur with Congresswoman Burks' assessment that we are now in a very compromised position, especially in regards to the Republicans." "Be that as it may," President Maynard said, "we have to act, and we have to act quickly. I've called you in here to discuss ways to bring down the deficit without harming the economy, and I mean immediately. Ben has put together a report that makes some good suggestions as to what we can do." The Chief of Staff handed Caldwell and Burks a copy. "But instead of diving right into details, I want to kick around some ideas." The president stood up and rubbed his hands together. "Okay, what can we do quickly?" "Let me first point out," Waters said, "that I feel spending cuts should be kept to a bare minimum. With consumer and business spending dropping, the economy needs government spending to take up the slack in demand." "I agree," the president said. "So what can we do on the revenue side? Raising income or corporate taxes will be a tough sell, and it'll take too long to show up in the Treasury." "The top marginal income tax rate is at 46%, Senator Caldwell said, holding out his left palm. "The corporate tax rate is 40%. Payroll taxes have gone up to 16.6% when employer contributions are included, and the capital gains rate is 30%, and we have a $2 per gallon gas and diesel tax. These have brought in some new revenues, but nowhere close to what we had hoped. I'm a bit leery that raising any of these rates will improve our revenue stream." "Let me suggest some new business taxes," Waters said. "Perhaps a termination tax like Germany and some other European countries have. Businesses are causing this downturn by panicking without reason, so they should pay for every employee they lay off or fire. That might be some social justice that even a Republican could agree to." "Don't count on it," Congresswoman Burks huffed. "You'd have to inject some blood in their veins first." Senator Caldwell patted her on the back. "Easy, Sandy. But getting back to the subject, any taxes are going to take a while to implement," Senator Caldwell said with an outstretched hand. "Do we have a pile of money we can tap into to tide us over? And hasn't any administration run into this problem before?" "To answer your question," answered Waters, "yes, FDR ran into this problem. He confiscated gold and paid people pennies on the dollar." "I would never agree to anything like that," Caldwell replied, shaking his head. "Perhaps we can sell off some land, old military equipment, or technology." "Excellent suggestion," Maynard said. "It's not a permanent solution, but it could help. So you all have the gist of where we're at. Let's adjourn for now and meet later this afternoon. I'll get the ball rolling on the old military equipment and some small technology sales." He stood up and leaned against his desk with both hands. "I want everyone to focus on thinking of resources we can tap into for a quick jolt of cash. A country this wealthy has to have it stashed away somewhere." It was mid-afternoon when Herm Stanbaugh parked his massive Ford pickup between a tiny electric car and a bumper sticker-laden minivan at the Indian Mound Mall in Heath. The ornery old farmer climbed out and clumped down to the steamy asphalt in well-worn, dusty leather boots. He made his way through the parking lot toward the entrance. A pair of teenage girls approached in extremely short miniskirts, their breasts pressing bralessly through their thin tank tops, advertising both their femininity and the visual enchantment of affordable cosmetic surgery. They looked up to Stanbaugh's ball cap, placed their hands over their mouths, and giggled. It sat upon his gray hair and well-tanned face and proudly stated, "Gulf War veteran." He lowered his eyes to the ground and stuffed his broad-knuckled hands in his blue jeans pockets, feeling like a walking museum display. As Stanbaugh entered the shadow of the mall entrance canopy, a security guard halted him with an outstretched hand. "What can I do for you?" Stanbaugh said, with a puzzled squint that made his bushy gray eyebrows shadow his brown eyes. I'm just here to pick up a present for my granddaughter. The guard pointed to Stanbaugh's neck. You're going to have to take that off. Take what off? That necklace. Stanbaugh lifted the dull golden chain from his neck with his finger and stared down at the tiny dangling crucifix. My grandma gave me this 40 years ago, and I ain't taken it off since, except to clean it. You have to. It's the law. What law? The Ohio Freedom of Religion law. It went into effect yesterday. I heard something about that, Stanbaugh huffed, but I didn't think anything so stupid could be true. Stupid or not, it's the law. It's one of these religious neutrality laws states have been passing, so you're going to have to take it off. Hell no, Stanbaugh snapped, thrusting his wide jaw forward. I ain't taking it off, and I ain't going to shop here if you're going to try and make me. I'll go home and make her something myself. Probably better than the Chinese crap you sell here anyhow. Stanbaugh turned to leave, but the guard placed a hand on his shoulder. You still have to take it off. You're in a parking lot and you might offend someone. Don't care if I do, Stanbaugh scoffed. He extended his lean, muscular arm and pointed out to the parking lot. My truck is right there. I don't think the world will come to an end if I walk 50 feet so I can get the hell out of here. The guard released his grip. Yeah, I don't suppose it would. He smiled. Have a nice day now. Yeah, I'm having a hell of a day. Stanbaugh creaked through the front door of his old farmhouse shortly before sunset and flipped on the faux crystal chandelier. It hung above an oak dining room table buried under stacks of paper. Vaccine records, examination reports, feed diaries, and other documents required by the Ohio Livestock Board for his cows, goats, and chickens, along with planting schedules, soil testing reports, pesticide and fertilizer receipts, harvesting records, environmental assessments, and other forms required by the Ohio and U.S. Agriculture Departments for his crops. Stanbaugh had filled everything out diligently, although he suspected no one ever read any of them. Disgusted, he huffed and headed back out the front door. Stanbaugh stood for a moment and stared out to his pasture, bathed in fading orange sunlight. He left the porch and walked out to an aluminum flagpole that flew Old Glory. He untied the hitch and lowered the flag into his arms. Old Glory was large enough to see from the road, but small enough for one man to fold without letting her touch the ground. Once the flag was tucked into a neat triangle, Stanbaugh held her against his chest and marched back through the front door and past the mountain of papers. He paused at a picture of Jesus, placed there in 1947 by his grandmother. "Give me strength," he asked with his jaw clenched. 2 more strides and Stanbaugh kneeled before an antique china cabinet. He opened the lower door with a scraping sound and placed Old Glory on her nightly resting place. "I'm going to leave you here," he said, "until this country deserves you again." Stanbaugh closed the cabinet door and stood up, his knees crunching. He opened up a glass door on the left side of the cabinet and grabbed a whiskey bottle from the place where his wife had left it before she started chemotherapy. He walked back out onto the front porch and sat down on a weathered porch swing. The rusty chains creaked as he pushed back with his old work boots. He unscrewed the black plastic cap, held the bottle up to his lips, and tipped his head back. So I hope you enjoyed the first half of July of 2029, and we'll wrap up the chapter next week. If you're really enjoying the book, as always, it is available at Clear Peak Press, which is where you would go to get an autographed copy. You just fill in the instructions to seller box a request for an autograph. It's also available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, the iTunes Store, the Sony Store, Smashwords.com, and other retailers. Have a nice week, and I look forward to meeting with you again next Sunday.